Peace, good people. It's been a while. A while. We are here. This is Guerrilla Intellectual University, special edition. There hasn't been any Guerrilla Intellectual Universities for quite a while, and we thought that when would be a good time to bring it back. And we all got this information that one of our favorite freedom fighters is in a crisis. He's been in a crisis for over 40 years. We know that. But we want to really give an update on this crisis. Before I even get started, I want to bring on my co-host, Dr. Joy James. How you doing, Dr. Joy James?
I'm doing well, Kalonji. How are you doing?
Man, I'm alive on arrival. It's been better days. It's been, I couldn't imagine it being worse days, but we here, and good to see you. This is our first Guerrilla Intellectual University, and whoo, man, it's been a minute.
More than a minute, right? And also, I think we should rename it to Guerrilla Intellectual Union, particularly because of the three guests that we're having today, their
Okay.
ability to work collectively under crisis and also for a beloved. So I think the union is going to be more important here than any kind of stamp of university or learning. I mean, this is a learning educational endeavor, but our commitments to each other are really the foundational text.
Well, I've been for the viewers, I've been working with Dr. James for quite a while. It seemed like a few decades, but it hasn't been that long because we've come up with so much content and work, so on and so forth. And she's notorious for changing names. So once again, she's done it today for this special occasion. Anyway, tell the people why we are here today. You talked about the guests. What
Well, the model of fighting, resisting, and loving, resistance to war, to torture, to murder under the guise of quote medical care or like medical neglect. That's embodied in Pam Africa, Ricardo Alvarez, and Noelle Hanrahan, right? Advocates for Mumia, Jamal. And as I say, or have said, we all say, I mean, Mumia is a teacher, so we could call ourselves a university, but this is going to be the head scholar, right? Of what it means to have compassion, of what it means to fight for our rights and our liberation, and to fight against a predatory state, but also how we love ourselves and how we link our intellect, our advocacy, like into a fortress, which Mumia has shown with light and love.
Hmm, without a doubt. Before we bring the guests on, I want to shout out one of our comrades for this wonderful piece movement. Anyway, yes. So we want to get started by bringing on a good sister uh, who I consider one of my revolutionary mothers out in Philadelphia. We've been banging for a long time, and she's no stranger to not just the platform but the movement. Period. I want to bring on the founder of the International Concerned Family and Friends of Mumia and Jamal. That is Mama Pam Africa. What's going on, Mama Pam? What's good with you? I think you're muted right now, Pam. I don't know what the. We see you looking sharp. Okay. For some reason you're muted, but we're gonna figure that thing out.
Is your mute button below you? Is that
Now that the thing's not muted, it must be the phone itself.
okay?
Okay, we hear you, but while you get ready,
Oh, there's a slash there on her mute
yep,
on the
she's
microphone.
unmuted one more time, Pam.
Turn up the volume.
Yeah, no, she may have to log off and log back in. Let's have you do that real quick. Uh, jump off and jump back in. But while we're waiting, we have two more guests. We have Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, who is one of our favorite movement doctors, and I believe he's one of the main physicians when it comes to Mumia, just getting in all the information, so on and so forth. And we also have the founder of Prison Radio, our good sister Noelle Hanrahan. How you doing, Noelle? And Ricardo?
Doing well. Thank you for having us. We're very honored.
Yes, yes, yes. Good to have you all here. While we're waiting for Mama Pam, we want to say, definitely thank you all for joining us this morning. Um, on this, we've had better occasions, but we're happy to see you here today. So, just getting it started, I think we will start with Noelle, if you could just kind of give us some background and context as to why we're here today.
So Mumia Jamal has been in prison now for 42 years, and he survived 3 execution attempts, one on the streets of Philadelphia in 1981 on December 9th, and 2 literal execution warrants. So his time in prison has been a real struggle for Mumia to communicate with us and also for Mumia to maintain his health. And in the last number of years, in particular, the last 8 years, Mumia has had many health struggles, and we as a community have rallied to make sure that Mumia Abu Jamal has survived, just like we rallied when he was under an execution warrant and prevent that. And he had hepatitis C, which was severe, and which there was a cure for, which the prison was preventing him from getting. And so the mobilization really, literally made sure that Mumia was given that life-saving cure in 2017. So then he had double bypass heart surgery in 21, and he is suffering from a number of medical conditions. But I'd love it if you could bring in Pam.
Hey, Mama Pam, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Hey, you live and direct. You got the Chris microphone now. She went and got the radio.
And look, I'm holding this phone, right? And I'm going to move her around, so I don't usually like to be on. So I'm just hoping I don't get too, because I get excited. I talk and I'm moving things. I'm trying to hold this thing still.
That's me all day, so it's all good. Don't even trip. I got to walk around the whole neighborhood, and I forget we on air. So
Yeah.
So Noelle started telling us about a little bit about Mumia's medical condition, but if you don't mind, walk us back to how we got to this point and how the alarm was rung, and what happened. Tell us this particular episode, because it ain't the first time.
Right. So I want to start with when Mumia's and Wadia's son Issa called me. Wadia's oldest son. He had called me 2 Sundays ago, I believe now, or maybe a week and a half. Because things is moving really fast because of the urgency. He called me to let me know he had just come from visiting Mumia. And this is the order that he told me what was happening. That when he was leaving the prison from visiting Mumia, as he was walking down the hall, tears was flowing down his face. And a lady that was coming down the hall, she turned to him and she said, "Are you okay?" And he said, before he could say anything else, she said, "Was that Mumia that you were visiting?" So he shook his head, yeah. And she says, "Oh." She said, "Okay." She didn't see it as Mumia. And then he said when he went to get in his car, he turned on the ignition and started crying. He said then his head was on the wheel trying uncontrollably. So he called me, told me what had happened, and he told me what he'd seen. He said as he was waiting for Mumia to come out, for the visit, and he said a lot of people came by. He said and then he was standing. He said he saw this old man and with a bald head come by and a young guy. So he knew that wasn't Mumia, and he's standing there. He says, and then he heard this voice say, "Issa." He said he turned and looked, and it was Mumia. He said he's trying to get himself together. Mumia said, "Oh, you shocked because I don't have any hair." But that wasn't it. He never seen him without the hair. But it was his face and his arms. And he had started getting dark. on this side of it. In fact, the face is thin. The face is thin, and he started getting dark splotches on the side of his face. How he described it, and he was saying the tip of his head, had some, like, another light colored rash. He said as he looked at his ears, he can see that the rash was there too. Looked at his arms when he hugged him, they were like black snake skin. And he said, he sat through the visit, but mostly that's what he, wanted to talk about, because they talked about personal things. And so when he told me this, I immediately called, Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, Noelle. I called Johanna Fernandez, Mark Till, and I think Suzanne Ross. And we started talking about it, and, the urgency of what was happening, then I just immediately started going on radio shows and make an appointment to go up and see Mumia. And here's one thing, when he called me, I had Noelle tell him to call me. And so he says, hello. So I said, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing well. I said, well, what do you call well? And so he said, well, he knew I talked with somebody else. Because, see, Mumia have a tendency to not talk about himself when he's damn near dying. And he wanted to talk about other things, but there was no conversation to be had there except his health. And as I looked at him, his nose shape has changed. And like I said, the face was real thin. And I had to do what I could to maintain myself while talking to him. And when I came out the prison, he wanted to talk. He's doing a new book. That's what he wanted to talk about. Getting that out, and other things that was happening. In the prison, that he's getting ready to do his dissertation, and things like that. But that's Mumia. Mumia does a podcast with with Professor Mark Lamont Hill, The Classroom in the Cell. If you was to hear Mumia, this is why I was so shocked. And because you're hearing him on the radio, you think everything is fine with this brother. Well, he just need to be released from jail. He's doing this, he's doing that. But it's the conditions that he's doing these things in. I'm sitting there and I'm watching him start to itch. And what Issa was saying, he was itching. His entire body was just scratching. As the visit went on, he started scratching more. He scratched, he itched 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And as we're talking right now, he's in a torturous mood, because I know he's itching. And there's no place that the itch is not, covering. And also, I'm really, really upset, because what I'm seeing here is the beginning of what I saw a few years ago, when his whole body was encased in this substance, and it was like crack. You see the red on the inside, like when a fish is out of water and his gills go up, and you can see the red inside. That's how that looked. His ears. And I took pictures back then, and you can see where his ear was leaving his face from the crack, and that was completely covered in this substance. You can see a that looked like, to me, like a black chicken. Others just looking like alligator. His legs, I pictured that, and they were the same, and the sores was on him from him scratching, and he was misdiagnosed, I believe, purposely.
We Pam's having some technical difficulties. If
The audio.
Pam, you kind of fading out. Pam, Yeah, you're fading out. Yeah. Okay. So we're having problems with your audio again, Pam. So while we get Pam's audio back in order, Dr. Alvarez, can you speak to what some of the things that she's talking about right now?
Yes. Let's see. I see her back on. Okay. So what we're really dealing with is I always have to begin and frame any discussion of a medical consultation with Mumia in the context of what is torture. Okay. So it's a medical consultation with a brilliant public intellectual who is a political prisoner, who is in prison by virtue of what he says and not what he did. And in this context, to do a medical consultation with Mumia in captivity means that there are certain nuances to words that he says that really kind of cue me into concern. And one of the words he said as it relates to the extent of his skin condition is that it was unstable. You can obviously see it. I saw him a little over a month ago in person, and then I have regular video visits. And in the last video visit is when he shared with me that it was unstable. Now, understand that these skin conditions, which is in the realm of eczema, which are difficult conditions to control, these skin conditions, at this point, it's affecting his sleep. So he's unable to sleep, and he's also exhausted because the institution that operates as he teaches from a place of seeking to degrade humanity and from a place of exerting social control so that they limit his capacity to have books, and he's up till 3 a.m. to deal with the demands of the institutional demands to remove his books. He's tired, he's exhausted, right? He's telling me that the itching is contributing to his poor sleep. Now, I want to combine the severity of the itching, which is worse now, combined with the fact that there's documented weight loss, and we had monitored the weight loss, and at a certain point it stabilized. Now, within medical criteria, when you have a certain percentage of body weight, you look to see, are there constitutional symptoms that would alert us to something, an underlying process that could be cancerous or something else that would warrant further investigation. And while there was stability of the weight, we remain vigilant and concerned because in addition to the severity of the itching, for which he shares a word unstable, which I take very significantly, because let me say, and Mama Pam alluded to this, Mumia has for 40 years been described as one who is a source of light. People would come to him at all times, and he's the one who will stay positive and bring love, and you know, he's the one who everyone will say when you come in, and you know, he's the one, no matter what his conditions, you leave feeling better. So a subtle word like that, as I learned from my colleagues, is like you pay attention to it. So you combine weight loss, even though it's stabilized, concerning, you combine the increasing severity of the itch that's affecting his quality of life to the point where he can't sleep, and he's telling you that. You combine the language of unstable, which is his words, and then you combine that with hair loss, and we're arguing that needs careful monitoring. Now, I want to share one other story, and I think we need to get back to Mama Pam, is that in addition to all this, we're also watching the development of a slight anemia. He has a condition that's known as anemia of chronic disease, which is a difficult condition to treat because it is not something that you can simply give iron to. It's a challenge of the metabolism of the iron, right? But the key to that is it's related to inflammatory processes. Indeed, his hematologist was thinking, and it's a logical presumption, that the exacerbation of his skin condition may have been contributing to this anemia. So that requires monitoring as well. Now, in addition to all of this, we need to recognize that Mumia was transferred out of the facility to see an outside cardiologist, and shares the story with me that he shackled. He asked the prison guards, "Why am I shackled?" They said, "We don't know. We just know we're taking you to this place." And he said to me, "That's probably their protocol, right? That's probably how they, how it works." He then comes to see this cardiologist, and the cardiologist says to him, "Why are you here?" All right. So what that demonstrates is that within medical systems, and I want to acknowledge that this happens in outpatient medical systems. Medical systems are so broken and stressful right now for all of the participants in that system. That is patients. It is such a hostile system that we literally describe doing community health work as being on the front lines. That is a language that's being recognized within primary care. The sense of being on the front line, the mindset of warfare, the challenges. So in this regard, we demonstrate now a breakdown, but there's something relevant here in terms of a story for our audience to understand. The cardiologist who Mumia described as an old school guy says, "Your blood pressure is probably high because you were shackled. So before I go changing your medication, let's get you back to your," imagine this is his prison setting. That oppressive setting would be what he would say your baseline environment, your home, so to speak. And then we're going to check your blood pressures over there. But it demonstrates to you the level at which the vigilance of the medical team and the legal team and his loving inner circle of supporters are so attentive to his well-being that when we get the call, "Hey, we need to now make sure that we put this system on alert," that every single aspect of his surveillance, including the surveillance of the liver cirrhosis, which was induced by the system, by the prison medical system, and the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, which deliberately violated community standards of care to create criteria for giving life-sustaining medication, the hepatitis C treatment, which was extremely expensive. They chose to create criteria that were so deviant from the proper standards of care that the medical legal team, Noelle and Brett and Bob, had to bring in expert testimony to say, "You have done harm because of the delay in the monitoring, the diagnosis, this false criteria. You have done harm." So he's in a state of harm.
Just to say, they delayed Mumia's treatment for 2 years when they had the cure. And that delay increased his risk of having liver cancer. And so he has to be monitored for that. And that delay exacerbated his underlying conditions, including this skin condition and extrahepatic. Your skin is an organ, and it was dramatically affected by the delay, the deliberate indifference. And we went to court and got a Third Circuit injunction for Mumia to get the fast-acting cure, the cure to Hep C. And then that was allowed. That was used by other prisoners across the country. It was the first one. So Mumia is one person, but we are advocating for everyone in this situation. Mumia had double bypass surgery in 2021, and they have never provided him outpatient care for his diet and exercise, which are the two key ingredients for recovering from cardiac surgery. He has been denied that now for over 2 years, going on 3 years. That means he will have another cardiac event because they are denying him adequate care.
I'm going to let Dr. Joy and Pam jump in, but I want to just ask just outright ask this question. Do you all feel that this is an assassination attempt of Mumia Abu Jamal? I'm not even, I mean, just like straight up blunt. I mean, I know that there's medical neglect, so on and so forth. Mumia is just, I don't buy that Mumia is just the average prisoner. So I'm just going to ask that question. What do you all feel about that?
No, he's not the average prisoner. And yes, they are definitely and in front of our faces, attempting to kill Mumia, for the bloodlust wishes of Maureen Faulkner, which is Officer Faulkner's wife, and the Fraternal Order Police. And the prison is in cahoots with it. Noelle, remind them of the day in court that Bob Bull came across these paperworks and and the fact that how we wound it up in court dealing with the medical is behind the fact that they didn't do right by Mumia inside the prison, and he filed grievances and they turned him down. Could you run that down to him,
There's
please?
two things I think that are really outstanding around the medical case around hepatitis C. One is they treated his condition, his skin condition, with a topical steroid, which put him into a diabetic crisis. They noted he had a high reaction to the steroids that were treating this while he was having the hepatitis C crisis. They didn't monitor his glucose. He went into renal failure. He was transported to the hospital near death. That was deliberate. It was in his charts that they should have monitored his glucose as a reaction to the topical steroid to the condition that he had, and they didn't. They let him go into renal failure. And then he was in the hospital, in the ICU, in a dangerous position. Also, with the hepatitis C, when we went into court, we realized in court, when Bob Boyle examined the people on the stand, their medical director had never testified in a case before, Dr. Paul Noelle. He said, I have never testified in a case before. That means that prisoners as patients had never been able to challenge the DOC in court. When Bob grilled him on there, he said, I told the DOC that what they said in the affidavit that they presented to the court was wrong. I told them in October, I told them in November, and I told them in the parking lot today that what they are presenting to the court was false. So maybe he wasn't willing to lose his medical license. He wasn't willing to lie for the DOC, but the DOC was willing to lie to try and prevent, to have the court believe this affidavit from their director of medical records, from their doctor that said that Mumia was not eligible for treatment. Now, the treatments, the 5 or 6 or 10 people that they were giving treatments for at that time, that they were not providing to the other 1,000 prisoners who had hepatitis C in a chronic stage, was esophageal various, where they tested your throat, where your esophagus would explode from your throat and you would die by bleeding through your mouth. That was the only thing that they were treating. And there were maybe 2 or 3 people that they were giving Hep C to. So you had to have so this system is designed to put our people, our family, our community in crisis and to kill them. Like it is designed to deny them the basic medical care that we deserve as human beings. And I want to say, I really appreciate Dr. James's philosophies on when we love, we win. When we survive, we win. When we fight, we win. When we stand up for our communities, when we stand up for our family, when we stand up for our people, it is really difficult. We are in a stage of grief. This is Guerrilla University, Guerrilla Union, but we need to know that when we work with this, when we survive with this, when we love with this, we're doing it in a place of trauma and grief. And we have to be caring for each other and just keep showing up. Because it's super painful to see your people in these conditions, and they have total control. Yes, it's a capitalist structural total control, but they're doing it in front of us to real people that are our fathers, our mothers, our cousins, our kids, and that makes it really difficult.
And that answers your question about the assassin and are they a part of it? They are clearly a part of it. And it also answers the questions of what happened to other inmates. Mumia, who filed all those papers just like other people filed them, but these other people did not have a movement and are behind them to keep pushing and pushing until we wound it up in court. And when we wound it up in court, Noelle just said the medical person had never been in a situation where he testified, about what was happening to these inmates. And the first time he do, it's Mumia. And when he was going to testify truthfully, the plot, the plan is uncovered. They plan it all the time. They wrote up false papers and they thought that Bob Ball would not catch it. They thought that this person would lie. Given, the idea of, not getting to court, Mummy could be dead right now behind their plot and plan. But it's the people, it's the movement, it's the love that goes into here, the consistency what goes in here, and the fact that this judge, I can't think of his name right now, but this judge was very youthful in the fact that Mumia is alive today because he made sure that Mumia got this cure. And what the prosecutors for the prison, and once the judge okayed this, they wanted to have a stay on it. They wanted to appeal his decision. And the judge said, you got the right to do what you want in appeal, but this order is going through. They tried that, and it was about a year and a half later that their appeal went through, but it was turned down. But had it went the way they wanted, they didn't care because they keep saying they're going to keep appealing and appealing and appealing until Mumia is dead. Just so happened the judge said, okay, you can appeal, but we're going ahead with this. Mumia would have been dead.
And we're talking structurally. We're talking like 17 to 20% of the prison population has active Hep C, which is more contagious than HIV. And it's active in the prison, and the prisons are not clean places, right? And then it's a silent killer. You have it and you can transmit it for decades. And 1 out of 7 African-American men in the community have it. And the culture in the community is not willing to treat this. We need to cure it. It's like polio. You can completely eliminate it if you actively treat hepatitis C, but they are allowing it to happen. And we have seen, and it's been revealed, that there have been experiments. This is in our lifetime. This is in our lifetimes that they have done things like acres of skin, the Holmesburg prison experiments. If you read the book Medical Apartheid, what they've done in other ways, we're not imagining what is happening to our people. We can see it with our own eyes. They are capable of these kinds of unbelievably inhumane patterns and practices.
So what comes to mind? Well, first, thank you all. I mean, just your courage and your consistency, and you're just making it so plain, as Malcolm says. I mean, just keep it plain. In my mind, it reminds me of COINTELPRO. I mean, there are different ways to eliminate. And so within the structure of the prison, which is pretty opaque, it's not just medical malpractice, right, or incompetency, because I'm assuming none of the doctors or nurses were stripped of their positions, after inflicting harm. They still have their jobs and they still have their, health insurance. So how do you see, and I also want to say that I've listened to the interview that Noelle did on Prison Radio with Mama Pam, learned from that Jared Ball did. I Mix What I Like, I believe, with Ricardo Alvarez, learned from that. So really curious about it. How do you see the strategy of resistance? And I'm going to just call it war resistance or assassination resistance, right? When so much of it is obviously, it's secreted away. I mean, it's just a fortress of pain and intimidation and death. I mean, because first you have to be able to get inside to get the narrative of what's actually happening. And then fortunately you bring it back out. What would you like us to do in terms of mobilization? And how do you see that on an international level? I know there's a journal launching in March in London called State Crime, and there's an article on Mumia in it, right? So, and then the people across the globe who support Mumia. So I'm kind of curious about how you can name the attempts of assassination, also is, I'm being repetitive, as Noelle's pointing out, political prisoners are targeted like right there in the bullseye, like that's our primary, but then it radiates out to secondary and tertiary, to other people, to people who maybe aren't organizing or activists or trying to resist. How do you see this like spreading out, but also specifically, what role should we play in the effort to stop medical assassinations and harm with inside prison walls, and also what radiates beyond them?
May I first address the question of medical assassination? Okay. The first thing I want to say is when Mumia gives his lessons, one of those lessons that helps expand an understanding of love, not fear, is compassion. And an aspect of that requires that we examine, there is no monolithic medical prison community. We have to appreciate, and this is something that I need to be really attentive to. There are people who step into these carceral settings where it's like, I'm going to step in here as strong as I can with love and try to do good and are part of change. It's not monolithic. And one of the things we talk about is when Mumia was getting hospitalized and we mobilized around the 4-point shackling, when he shared that trauma of, imagine trying to being in 4-point shackles and then unable to scratch yourself, this beautiful, brilliant, peaceful man, right? So, and then it creates in us a language and an understanding of where you can have the trauma where it was difficult for him to communicate that. So that can be happening in settings with compassionate medical personnel who are competent. One of the questions I asked him is like, do you trust? What is your energetic? How do you feel? And he describes people who can be loving and caring. Now, I want to say that in addition to that spectrum, there's care within prison settings and outside. And there are competent, caring people who can operate in oppressive systems and do a good job in their narrow job. But where there is a failure, a deep failure, is for the professional community and the medical community to basically acknowledge the underlying oppressive violence that our community, our brothers, our sisters, our loved ones are suffering. And in this regard, there is a language called the social determinants of health. That means the determinants that don't involve you just taking your blood pressure medication, but are looking at poverty, or looking at homelessness, or looking at different variables. One of those variables is violence. And it's specifically state violence that's so important. So when we look at medical assassination, on some level, there is medical complicity at the highest levels with these oppressive systems. So it's important to recognize that, was that high blood sugar that was missed? Was it, just missed? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. Does that happen in an outpatient setting? Absolutely. That happens. We're not saying that someone necessarily deliberately did it. But what's important for us to understand is that in a context where there is objective evidence of an effort to assassinate him, it is important that we all voice that. It's important that we all, from a place of our professional and medical ethics, come from a place that says this state violence is so gross, is so deliberate, that we need to be able to stand from a place of defense of our community. Does that make sense?
I interviewed Maureen Faulkner. I went right up to her. I looked just like her. I'm 100% Irish. I went right up to Maureen and I said, yo, Maureen, what's up? Like, how are you doing? What do you think about this case? And she said, we're going to lose. He's going to get out. The only thing we can do is appeal and appeal and appeal until he dies in prison. That is the essence of a frivolous lawsuit. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court privileged her King's Bench petition for standing and heard it to make it, and then now it's not frivolous. But that was their strategy. They said, we cannot win. And she said it right to my face. She also said, oh, you've got to hear what his lawyers are saying. You've got to go to prison radio and listen to what is happening with his lawyers because he's going to get out. I almost couldn't hold it together. But I was like, really? Oh, God, I'll check that out. As soon as I get right off of the stage, I'll go check that out.
And then within prison systems, there are also privatized medical corporations that operate for profit and operate in such an abusive and mean-spirited, money-oriented way that they behave in collusion with the state in ways that there's deeply neglectful care that is not patient-centered and loving-centered. So there's diversity within the medical community, within prisons, outside prisons, but overall complicity in not acknowledging an overall structure of violence against our community. That's the message.
It's great to use examples. So Michael Sobofur, who helped invent the cure for hepatitis C, lives in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and he said it should be free, like Jonas Salk made the polio vaccine free. But what happened was it became corporatized. It became bought by Gilead. And then it was being charged at $8,000 a pop when it cost $1 a pill and you had 13 pills for 13 days and you were cured. And they were charging $80,000 for that. Now, what happened in this capitalist reality is that India said, no. They said, we were violating your copyrights and your intellectual property packaging. We're building factories and we're making this for our people. Egypt said this because they had a large group of people who were infected because they used multiple needles for vaccines before they knew that it was transmitting Hep C. They had 20% of the people in Egypt were testing positive for hepatitis C. They went to Gilead and they said, we're breaking your patent. You give us a deal, pennies on the dollar. We're just going to make this stuff because we need to save our people. So there were international forces pushing Gilead to not, exploit this situation. And the U.S. government could have, under the Constitution, gone in as a public health necessity and made this free. They still could do that.
So you're saying that. So for our audience, you're saying that they were talking about charging $8,000.
$80,000 for a treatment.
$80,000. And it costs how much to make?
$1 a pill. But they would say there was all this development. We would say that the U.S. government paid for a bunch of the development. We would say it's a public health necessity. We should eat this cost right up front because it's going to save tons of costs. It's easier to cure people before they have a manifest of a critical disease where they're hospitalized. The whole point of preventive care is so that you don't have the hospital end game cost, which the state absorbs. So it would be more efficient and more effective. It just wouldn't privilege the capitalist class that had that patent.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mama.
Involving, putting it into things is, pulling together. When we found out Mumia had the hepatitis C and it was $1,000 a pill, we wasn't just seeking the cure. The pill was the cure. We wasn't just seeking that for Mumia. A lot of people was telling us, well, you'll never be able to do it. And, because if you do it for Mumia, you're doing it, you would have to do it for everybody. We're always talking about the everybody, not just Mumia. And but $1,000 a pill, what we found out, Joe Piet and I went to a meeting at the Board of Health. Some people was on the radio and they was talking about, doing work around hepatitis C. And what we found out there, that it was, I think it was 400 and something, the number sort of get away from me right now, that was in the prison in the state of Pennsylvania. When we were at that meeting, we found out that it was 46,000 people, that actually had a state. What we had here was an epidemic, and the government was not telling people about the cause. you can look back into the records at the point that we put the pressure on about Mumia and the other people and what was going on with people on the outside. Then you've seen commercials about hepatitis C. I'm saying everything is clocked. They wasn't saying nothing about what was going on here. We wound up working with the Board of Health. We wound up working with a organization that was um I think it was gay, lesbian, transgender people who had paperwork, books, and documents on what was going on with the hepatitis C. We knew he had hepatitis C. We didn't have the information to put out about what was going on. The Board of Health had books stacked up, cards of information. We went to the state representatives, in City Hall, the city people. None of them had anything on hepatitis C, something as dangerous, as deadly as this, that not only affected the inside of the prison, but it also is affecting thousands of people on the street, men, women, and children. We took that information and we put it in and demanded that it be in their place. And a lot of them didn't know a darn thing about hepatitis C in the state, or if they was keeping it quiet. In fact, when State Representative Vanessa Brown and tried to get, we wanted, what was the criteria for getting the hepatitis C cure? The health department for the prison supposed to have a book explaining everything to you. We could not get that book. We could not get that book. None of the state representatives. When we got the book of what was going on was in that hearing for Mumia before that judge, the one that Robert Bull and the other lawyer
Brett,
and Brett Brody, and they demanded that book. The prison officials that was trying to stop Mumia, they didn't want to give up the book. They kept demanding the book, and because it's something that everybody was supposed to have in the prison and their loved ones as well. The judge ordered, wait, the judge ordered them to give up the book. When the judge looked at the book sitting on the bench, he took a deep breath and he called for a recess. And the criteria in order to get the cure and all, you had to be, where these other inmates was at. But in the book, it said when you at that stage, it wasn't no sense in giving it to them. These are the things, Noelle, you can go ahead, with more. But I think that point was very, very important because, again, it shows the mentality, the murders, the assassination attempts that they have on people, that they was refusing to give us that information until the judge made them give it up in court, or they would have been held in contempt.
it was the people that made them give it up because the DOC asked that document be under seal. And so the judge was considering putting that document under seal, even though it was presented as evidence in court. And so they through that day, they held it under seal. But we walked out of the courtroom immediately. We went to the public records request office in Harrisburg. We called them up and we said, we're ordering this right now. And we want it because it's a public record and we know it is. What happened is they came back in the end of the day and the judge said, okay, we have to return to we're going to put this under seal. And the Department of Corrections said, they stood up and they said, we can't. The public records office told us that it's a public record and we have to give it to the defense and make it public. They handed it to Brett and to Bob. And as the guy handed it to them, he said, please don't make copies of this and distribute it to the other inmates because that's what we were afraid of.
Well, so your advocacy for Mumia opens the door for better health for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. It seems to me the public doesn't quite realize that or the full extent of what you're sharing right here. Because sometimes they silo political prisoners, right? And they don't see that, like, the fight for them is really the fight for everybody.
I'll tell you one more story. So we worked with AIDS activists, and the gay and lesbian community had been doing decades of work around healthcare access. And so there was a hepatitis C committee in New York that we worked with very closely. They were advocating at the American Liver Association meeting. The American Liver Association meeting had said that the previous treatment, interferon, was not possible, that was medically not indicated anymore. There was a window where they were meeting, but they weren't going to say that the expensive cure was now the new medical standard. We went with the activists to that meeting. Mumia activists disrupted that meeting and had people in that society demand that the Liver Association say that the hepatitis C cure, which was available at the time and would have cured people, had to be the absolute medical standard. And that passed only because activists were in the room. And it was because of the work that we had done with these other activists. And it was only because Mumia was in crisis. So we knew that the American Liver Association was going to be really important. And we knew that they couldn't bury this. And we were loud, we were insistent, and we negotiated with the people behind the scenes to make that Liver Association do what they should have done in the first place, which was say that the standard for treatment for hepatitis C was the available cure.
Can I ask quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of questions then. To follow up on everything you're saying, still processing. What would be a relationship, or what are your relationships to medical schools? Like Brown University has Mumia's papers, right? I think Jared Ball did a show or a segment on that. Noelle, you were there for the large conference. Brown has a medical school as well, right? So I'm wondering how, I can see how your activism just radiates out for everybody. I'm wondering how at medical schools or universities that have, medical schools, they also become advocates, or how they might or do work with you around these issues. And then the last question I have is like, okay, you've got a murderous widow, you've got death cults moving around. How do you, I'm thinking also the person who was murdered by nitrogen, right? I mean, the U.S. has a bloodlust around control and death and killing. How do you see your work also linking up, even though Mumia is no longer on death row, but there are different ways to kill the incarcerated, right? How do you see it also linked up to, sort of anti-death penalty issues? And so I'm asking largely about coalitions.
I'm going to ask permission to try to address that from a perspective of a message that both Mumia gave me and Jamal Muntakin. Multidisciplinary. Now, I've had challenging medical consultations in my life, but I will say that one of the blessings of being in relationship to such an expansive spiritual being is that look who he draws in community. Brilliant philosophers, brilliant historians, brilliant lawyers, and brilliant humans and activists. Our capacity, when I spoke to him about multidisciplinary, Mumia said something to me that I'll never forget. He said yesterday. And I heard that in two ways. One meaning almost like there's a way he speaks. I almost feel like we need to have a memory that this has happened before to connect, because he reminds us always to connect with the ancestors. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to come and try to almost like, we have to come back and recall that there were examples where disciplines work together. Now, we have to remember that the construction, the literal manifestation from its roots, hands, the construction of mass incarceration required multiple disciplines coming together. Architects, planners, medical systems, legal systems. It was corporate systems. It was multidisciplinary to put it together. We need to have multidisciplinary to bring it back and deconstruct it, de-engineer it. When I spoke with Mumia, when I spoke with Jaleel, we meet regularly, because Mumia said if it's going to be multidisciplinary, it needs to be led by a revolutionary. That is Jaleel, and recognizing that this is the work that we're doing, those of us who are in professional capacity, who are speaking to associations, we're doing the work that has already been done by Laura Whitehorn's work with RAP and other. The released elders have been a huge and powerful voice. And what are they saying? There is a clear call: liberate our elders. This is institutional elder abuse. So to answer your question, when you say, what can we do? Those of us in a professional capacity can act as a liaison, a byway of connecting with our professional societies. Because what has happened is there is a sea change now in our multidisciplinary professional societies. To report elder abuse, if we can come together in a coordinated way, multidisciplinary unity for mass incarceration abolition, if we can get a Mumia coalition together and go to our professional societies and hold them accountable, then we can address the identified social determinant of health, specifically the FOP in Mumia's case, and address the harms of unqualified immunity, right? Or qualified immunity that gives them permission. And if we can address those harms of the code of silence, right? If we can identify this corporation as an individual, as Citizens United, and begin that process of doing a diagnostic analysis of their pathology and bring that out into the public in concrete ways, then we begin to create a coalition where we put correctly the culprit, the FOP, on trial. And that's what I believe is going to be the next stage of this. And this is why Mumia has shared with me that, you know, and when we do this, when we address the FOP, and I did this with permission with Pam, because we need to be sensitive, that we want to be sensitive to the most vulnerable. Mumia is incarcerated. Our strategy is to keep them alive, in transition to freedom immediately, right? If we can do that effectively, including the emerging ethical community, biomedical ethical community, how strongly there's consensus around abolitionist public health. We're in communication with the public health, the American Public Health Association, the AMA. All these institutions, we're all filled with contradictions. No one's perfect here, and abolition is a humbling journey. But if we can begin that conversation in defense of our communities, I believe we will turn the tide, in effect, and honor the call, liberate our elders. And when we bring them back into our community in a loving way, then they give us counsel on how to reverse engineer.
You know, you mentioned, and I love what you just, I mean, there's so many different nuggets and jewels that have been dropped during this particular broadcast. You know, I want to start by saying that, and we're absolutely grateful that you all are bringing it to the forefront. And as I believe, as Dr. James mentioned earlier about Malcolm, making it plain. You know, you're making it straight up and down plain. It's not a whole bunch of legalese. It's not a whole bunch of medical terms that go over people's heads. This is the point. This is what's going on. We're straight to it. You mentioned the FOP. I know that, you know, I speak to Mama Pam somewhat regularly, and she's had, you know, we've talked about different issues, everything from the medical situation, going back to the legal side of things. And I know that Pam, you had mentioned to me in the past about instances where it could have been somewhat a no-brainer, or it should have been like you knew the victory was won because of different situations that didn't gel right, and that the state knew it. Because I mean, even with what you all said a few minutes ago in regards to the the prison doctor, and the DOC and so on and so forth. In any civilized nation, they'd have been like, okay, get this man out of here. This is ridiculous. The doctors testifying, saying that, look, they lied. I told them that they were lying. They're wrong. I told them they were wrong, even up until we got into the damn parking lot of the courtroom, of the courthouse. And I don't even understand why we're here talking anymore. Pam, can you give us a chronological history? Give us let's talk about, what led up to all of this, and because there's flaws. We can't sit here and not address the elephant in the room. We can't sit here and act like, okay, well, we're just going to blame the medical part. It is an absolute system of corruption that not only goes from the medical side of things, but to the FOP, to the judges, the lawyers, so on and so forth. Pam, bring us home. Talk to me.
Right. I want to go, since we're in Black History Month, I'll start with Judge Tucker, towards the last time that Mumia was in court. And I think Judge Tucker, and I want to take this time right now and thank Noelle, because this is a very important program, that we be on point. And that when we say, like I said, it was the LGBT group that we went to, it was the AIDS organization, as she was saying, and the details, because you get lost in details sometimes, and I'm glad that she brought out, because I missed that part about where the judge participation in it, and getting that much needed book on how they saying the criteria for hepatitis C would be administered, because they fought it all the way till the end. And they're saying ain't no power like the power of the people. When the power of the people don't stop, we didn't stop there. And it's so important that we all work together, because where one person missed something, the other people are there to catch it and move on. That part got completely past me, and I thank you, because it's very important that that be brought out, just as important as how it came about, getting out. But Judge Tucker is a Black judge. He's a Republican in Philadelphia. Mumia case wound up in front of him because of the weight of the Williams case. Williams was a brother who had Ron Castile as a DA in his case. And when it went before the Supreme Court, Castile was sitting there. Is that right, Noelle? Getting make sure I was right.
He was the DA and he was sitting on the case as a Pennsylvania Supreme Court judge, so ruling on his own case.
Right. So Williams filed a suit against that and won it. And once he filed that suit, doors was open for other people who have actually went through that thing, where the DA becomes when you complain about it, he becomes the person that makes the decision on, the next steps. So Mumia filed as well for it, and it went before Judge Tucker. And it's very important to understand that Judge Tucker was the judge who took Castile down and all for the Williams case in the beginning. Mumia case winds up in front of Judge Tucker. And I think it almost took about 2 years or a year and a half before he made his decision on what it was going to, about the appeal for Mumia. He granted Mumia appeal, and he said, I'm not granting this because the DA was saying that our lawyers hadn't filed papers properly, or they hadn't filed something. And he was trying to throw the Mumia's appeal thing out there. But Judge Tucker said, I'm not giving it to you on the Williams case, because during that time there were several boxes of information that was found. And what he said, I'm giving it to you on the letter that the Castile wrote to the governor asking that all people who had killed cops be executed. And what had happened with that letter, the response was missing. And when you say that you're going to, because the thing was to connect in this particular phase, Castile to Mumia, you know. So the letter itself, connected them, because when he said all, Mumia was amongst the all, number one. And and when the letter that the governor sent back to Castile, um, it's all of a sudden missing. So what he said was that behind the fact that that evidence was missing, and that, and that's very important. I can't think of the legal terms and stuff, for that, and but he was granting Mumia an appeal. Maureen Faulkner and them, who, oh, let me tell you about the court, what happened when the judge granted Mumia the right to the appeal. I'm always outside, and I make sure the people get in the courtroom have good seats. I make sure that what's going on in the hallway, and monitoring the police, making sure they're not messing with our people, and I monitor the outside, bringing information back and forth. This particular day, there was so many, old retired cops and cops from everywhere, and I was in they was in wheelchairs and some everything rolling into that courtroom that day, and I didn't understand what was going on, and but what it was, he granted them the appeal. Maureen Faulkner, she kept going off in the courtroom, and the black judge said to Maureen that if she continued acting the way she did, he would have to take her out. Now, number one, you do not take the FOP, this government golden cow. Oh, Dad, I shouldn't have said that. Yes, I did. I said it. And all, because she is who they use, and all, to the grieving widow to take Mumia, to get this far. So when he had to actually put her out the courtroom. And when she came out, when this thing was over, and all the FOP was angry, I'm still not understanding what went on. And she walked by, she looks at me, and she called me the B word, right? And the thing was to calm people down from attacking her. I didn't find out till later what had actually went on, that he had granted Mumia the appeal. And that's the day I do believe that because when they left from out the court, they were so angry. We was on a corner demonstrating, that they got together in a formation to march down the street where we were at. And like they gonna take the street, or they gonna run us off the corner or something. And so we called for people to, take the street, and we was hollering, whose streets, our streets. When they seen the massive number of people that was out there from all walks of life, and all was chanting, they curved off, and they went to the Fraternal Order Police Lounge, which is in the Northeast. Noelle was brave enough. Oh my God. She went up there as a journalist, and he got the information from from Maureen, that they had lost. They knew they lost, because if that appeal go through, that's it for Mumia. That's it for Mumia. And I was also told that when you have when the judge grant appeal, you should file an appeal bail for appeal bail, right? Well, none of that stuff there happened, and I don't know the legal ease and things that go along with that, but that didn't happen. But they came up with a plan. They talked about a plan that day and other days in the paper, that they was going to do something to stop that appeal. The words, get away from me right now, and they did. They came up with what was known as the King's Bench Act, and which didn't apply to them. They tried it with one judge, and Noelle can be more detailed on the King's Bench Act, because she know that legal language. They tried it before one judge. The judge turned them down. They had no standing for the King Bench Act. They tried a second judge. Same thing, turned down. So they're judge shopping. So then they get a third judge who takes it on. What that does, it stops everything in its track. And the King's Bench Act, what they were trying to say, that the DA Larry Krasner was a friend of Mumia's, and that he didn't do certain legal things that he was supposed to do. So they were going in on that. And this is a group of people who was desperate, and the judge that took this on, the panel of judges that took this on, they held Larry Krasner, because Larry Krasner was not too. He didn't have a lawyer in this, particular thing, and none of the Mumia's attorneys was allowed to be in there because this was about Mumia. So they had him for a couple months. And when they came out with a decision, because Larry was not as bad as he was then. And when I'm talking about bad, I'm talking about filthy, low, like stinking with fear. He came out and said Mumia was guilty and there was no evidence and, blah, blah, blah. And but the reading of the decision that was put down by those judges, and people got to read that. What I want to do, and Sister Joy was saying, things that we can do. I want to put together a chronological thing showing, in details what the names, what these different things were, but they stopped it. When they did come up with a decision, it wasn't in favor of Mumia. And by this time, Judge Tucker is gone. He's no longer there. They replaced him. And I'm saying this is Black History Month. And that's why I'm doing these 3 Black judges. Tucker, who gave Mumia the right to an appeal and laid it out legally, how this stuff was supposed to go. And the FOP with Maureen Faulkner, who blocked that. Then we get a Black judge by the name of Clemens. Clemens is a Black woman judge who was a Catholic, who claimed the fame was that she had, members in her family or a member in her family that was, hung, that was lynched, and that she believed in fairness, humanity, and doing the right thing. So she was able to fool some people. Some people believe this woman who was in the courtroom not acting that way, because she never acted like she was going to be fair to Mumia. She called for a few 30 days or 90 days pause in between it while she make another decision. And she done already said she wasn't giving it to Mumia. In between this time, a Black judge, a badass Black judge from Arkansas, a judge, a 20-year sitting judge. I done got up now, a 20-year sitting judge, by the name of Griffin is his last name. First name?
Wendell.
Wendell Griffin, who's also had his own church there. And he had some history, and he know the law. He pointed out that Mumia should have been out there long before Clemens, long before Tucker. Mumia should have been out there when they found them boxes. And first it turned out to be 6, then it turned out to be another number. What was the final number of them boxes they found with information when they said they had turned over all the information that was in the case? This is where Tucker also found the reason to to give Mumia an appeal. How many boxes was that they found?
There were a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was way over 6. So based on that,
And what did these boxes contain? I'm sorry, I didn't, just for the
they
listeners.
contained evidence that was supposed to have been turned over, that wasn't turned over. And I do believe there was a whole lot more. And Noelle and some other people, and was not allowed to look at them, but they've been in they know this case back and forth. But
His lawyers looked at them really closely, and they found stuff in there. And also Judge Tucker found stuff in there that was really valuable. And
Right.
what But the kinds of things that were never given to the defense was a note by one of the key eyewitnesses, and I'll describe what eyewitness means in a minute. But Robert Chobert, a cab driver, said he saw Mumia shoot Officer Faulkner. There's a letter in the files that were never given over to the defense that says, after the trial was over, he wrote to the ADA McGill and he said, "Where is my money? I am writing for my money. You've not been returning my phone calls. I want to know when I'm going to get paid."
Mm-hmm.
So that was never turned over. And that you have to be able to talk to that guy and ask him, what did he mean by that? It wasn't lunch money. It wasn't bus money, right? And so they proved that in front of Clemens. There was other materials that say that they treated favorably Cynthia White. She was never convicted of any other charges, and she was a working prostitute for a number of years. Was that because they put in place special instructions that she would be treated differently? Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of evidence that it corroborates that. Veronica Jones, we know that people were offered deals. So that information that her cases were followed and she wasn't convicted and she was given special treatment, that was buried in the files. What was also buried in the files were handwritten notes by Joseph McGill saying what color the jurors were, marking down the color, but more importantly, he made sure that he would take white jurors over black jurors that had the same status, employment status, relationship to police, whatever. So he was privileging people based on their race. He was striking black jurors, and these were the handwritten notes that had never been turned over. So these were key pieces of evidence that have never been allowed in court. Judge Lucretia Clemens said that none of this was material, that it was procedurally barred because it didn't rise to, she didn't even get to the merits of any of these issues. Mm-hmm. She said it didn't rise to enough to have overturned the jury's verdict. So calling into question the only people, theoretically, who saw it, whereas we had other evidence that wasn't involved in this case, but because they don't allow you to have cumulative evidence, they only allow you to talk about the piece of evidence you found today. But the other pieces of evidence that were discovered that weren't allowed in the record, and there's a lot, were photos of the crime scene by the Philadelphia Bulletin 10 minutes after the crime occurred, before the police photos, that show that Robert Chobert wasn't where he said he was going to be. That cab driver, his cab was not on the scene. It was not parked behind the police officer's car. He was not in the direct line of sight. That evidence is not also in the record so that the judge can look at it in relationship to also, where is my money from Robert Chobert? Robert Chobert, who was given favorable treatment on his probation. He was on probation, driving a cab without a license. What was he on probation for? Throwing a Molotov cocktail into a school for pay. But the original court judge, Robert Sable, the hanging judge, who said he was going to help him fry the N-word in the first week of the trial, which was by another judge deemed cumulative. You can't look at all this. Mm-hmm. Another judge, Pamela Demby, deemed this not material. Mm-hmm. This statement didn't affect, this statement by Terry Moore Carter, a court reporter, did not affect the course of the trial. We can't look at that now because it's already been dismissed. But that's what Robert Chobert is. He was given deals on his probation. He was given the ability to drive his cab without getting his license taken away. He was on probation, and Sable ruled that it wasn't a crime falsity. It wasn't a crime falsehood. It wasn't, you can't impeach him. You can't use the fact that he was on probation for throwing a Molotov cocktail into a school for pay to impeach his testimony. So we have this very upstanding Robert Chobert.
So with all of this evidence, I mean, just like overwhelming amounts of evidence that keeps on coming, and I mean, it's like the Energizer Bunny. It just keeps on going, right? Why, playing devil's advocate, and for folks out there that's listening to this, that's like, oh, I think he did it. And of course, if they said they think he did it, they really didn't research a damn thing. But why is Mumia Abu-Jamal in prison? That is the question of the hour.
I believe it is because we have not effectively identified the elephant in the room, which is putting the FOP on trial. We must be clear that they are defending the 1981 Philadelphia FOP, for which you have one of the most corrupt police departments in the history of the nation that warranted unprecedented federal investigation of the level of corruption, for which 1/3 of Mumia's arresting officers were subsequently tried and charged and jailed for corruption, tampering with evidence, and for which, and this is really important as a medical provider, okay, as a medical provider, in my statement with Mumia that was stated directly to the state, I stated basically that the court is illegitimate in my mind, right? For which they had perjury of multiple police officers who subsequently remembered Mumia's hospital confession, which was necessary to nail the coffin and establish the death penalty. They remembered it months later. And I reviewed the court documentation, and Mumia made commentary to this. They remembered it in the context of being brought together for an examination of police brutality and were queried by the investigator, does anybody remember a confession? And this is in court documentation, at which point they proceeded to raise their hand. Now I want to share with you, Kalonji, that 29 years ago, I was driving across the Bay Bridge and I first heard Mumia's words and I was struck. I had to inquire, who is this brilliant man? And at that point, that's when I connected with Noelle. And I went and got a press pass and walked into the Fraternal Order of Police. And I met face to face with Bell, who was the partner of the slain officer. And I looked at him and I asked him so I could personally understand and energetically feel spiritually how could he, he's just this man, this brilliant man is going to die. What was his response? And I watched him and I understood clearly it is perjury. At that point, I walked out and I saw a Costello and I understood that I was stepping into a space where they were complicit in a world of violence. And let me say, I kind of understand this. I mean, there's some about, there's people I've known who roll this way, with that logic of racism, this self-identification as being a warrior, defending society from that creation of an otherness, that dehumanization, that whole internal logic. I felt that energy. And after that, because Pam had actually encouraged me, Mom Pam was like, go, I said, listen, I'm going to go. Say, go. And then we began a relationship, a mentorship with Mama Pam around, what it means to help defend Mumia. But let us be clear, we have now established that there is such clarity of a desire to assassinate Mumia from a place of the Fraternal Order of Police, but also the complicity of the Department of Corrections as it relates to the hepatitis C case, as it relates to what amounts to medical assassination, not just of Mumia and others, that it is a legitimate concern for anybody. It is healthy to have a deep skepticism and be concerned about Mumia's assassination. In the case right now before us, as it relates to the changes in his health, the level of our combined relationship, medical and legal, working together, and Mumia instructs us, we are medicals to be in service of understanding. The court of public opinion is very different from the challenges of the actual court, the actual documentation, the actual strategic efforts. We need to support those efforts.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to follow up then with what Kalonji said and important things you put on the table. So it, FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, they seem to operate as organized crime, right?
Correct.
You say that we have not successfully or systematically engaged them, but you've also said about Mumia's calling and Mumia's spirituality and love, not fear. So how could a loving campaign confront organized crime that we have to pay for with our tax dollars while they're doing harm and also facilitating death and assassination? What does it look like? And I'm asking from the zone of like academia, right? So I'll just speak from my own zone, which has limitations, but I'm in the zone. So what would it look like, for schools? Or if for me, when I'm listening to all the important things that you're sharing, I also see the adjacent line of Palestinian prisoners being murdered, right? When they're in custody, right? Their medical abuse and neglect. So obviously this is a global issue. What will we do specifically in our engagement with the FOP under the guidelines that you and Mumia have asserted? Heal in the family, be compassion, stay with the ancestors, love, not fear.
So one place that I think, and I've been thinking about this for a long time because I go to a lot of prisons and I deal with a lot of prisoners and talk to them all the time. The guards and the prisoners have the same health concerns. The violence and trauma that is endemic within a prison does not stay inside a prison. So the people at SCI Green, where Mumia was, were the torturers in Abu Ghraib, and they were the torturers of their family members at home through domestic violence, right? So we know that prisons are sites of trauma for both the prisoners and the guards. And so I know that tuberculosis doesn't care. It's going to infect guards as well. So there is some common cause in the conditions of how people do their work. Harder for me to imagine a common cause with a police force of 6,500 jackboot white, majority white occupation forces in Philadelphia. It's hard, but maybe it is possible because they are victimized by what they have to do every day. They are required to abuse people. They are required to treat people, and they have higher incidence of mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And they have, I'm not saying that police jobs are that stressful. I bet being cabbie is far worse, but I think that they are exposed to being actors of violence in a way that's extreme. And maybe, things you could think about would be, you can't do that job for more than 10 years. You have to cycle other people in. You have to have more than 6 weeks of training, more than 8 weeks of training. Maybe you shouldn't be 18. Maybe there should be a flock of social workers and everybody should, it should be 6,500 social workers and not 6,500 armed, jackboot guys. So I think that it's hard. I think one of the things is we have to really challenge ourselves. How can we challenge ourselves to think outside the box? Love, not fear, thought outside the box. It's about love. It's about shared common humanity. They are destroying their own community at the same time that they are the perpetrators. And I don't know quite how I can be in bonding with them or see their pain too when their foot's on my neck. I believe in self-defense, but we the city jail, right? City jail, people are dying. 40% staffing shortage. Philadelphia State Road, it's horrific. There's a place to bond with the people there that are the guards because they are under extreme stress. So if you put a volunteer table out there once a week, you're going to start getting their stories. They have stories. They have to be whistleblowers. There has to be whistleblowers within the culture to undermine their ability to do their work. But it's difficult because our people are so vulnerable and because what happens to our children is real.
That's a very good question, Joy. And I think Noelle is capturing what I understand, okay, to be Mumia's message around compassion. And when he shared that message with me, I may have shared in the other program, in the other interview.
Mhm.
He was 28 days in a special cell getting ready to be executed. It was at that point that he's hearing a white guard talk about committing violence that would have had generational implications. And he says to me, like, almost like, I guess he clearly didn't understand my position, but he made it clear, I am here to give you this message.
He counseled the guy.
He counseled him around the implications and understanding it. Now, Mumia has told me, he said, I am literally living witness in this hell to watching these correctional officers generationally. I'm watching their sons come. He says they do not like this. They are in this cycle of violence. They're suffering. He has that wisdom. So an aspect of compassion is to be curious. And we can understand within the movement that it is necessary for many people who have been directly victims of that physical, brutal violence to say they're all pigs, they're all this. But the importance in recognizing that they're not monolithic. So, for example, within correctional officers, there's rich opportunity because there's close engagement of prisoners. I mean, let's look at how many times you have, wardens recognizing the upstanding characters of political prisoners, what they've gone through. That happened with Sitawa just recently, his release here, and the work that we're doing here, where we engage in the same kind of conversations on the phone. As a medical consultant, I'm consulting with a political prisoner who is a victim of torture.
Something about belief and hope, but it's really hard because in the presence of the violence, it's extremely difficult. So, but there is some level of hope. Not every guard is a sociopath.
So those of us who are more privileged, who are distant, who have a class and professional status, if we can come together and we can start engaging them, recognizing it does us no service not to be curious and respect that they're not monolithic and that there is an internal suffering and tension, that break the code of silence by saying, we do not believe 330,000 police officers believe that this isn't perjured testimony. Also, be curious enough, we need to be examining who is the FOP. Through years of research, we recognize what is their institutional structure, what is their public-facing leadership, what are their videos, what are they saying, and this is really important. This is really important. How they are so highly organized and use nonprofits within especially the Black churches. Now, Mama Pan had a really strong story about that. And we can start engaging in those places to say, do you truly believe? And we go through an exercise where we say, one of the exercises I do is sort of like, what is your metaphor? What is your superpower? But imagine saying, do you truly believe that every single cop killer is guilty? Just that single question. Is it possible that a cop killer could be innocent? The idea of exclusion, the special category of cop killer in the law, and it opens up rich opportunity for engagement. But we need to be coordinated and multidisciplinary in doing that. Why? Because they are so violent. They are so violent. We need to buffer the most vulnerable. That's how I understand a strategy going forward, that recognizing Mumia's principal social determinant of health and engaging it in a way that's both respectful, professional, but absolutely clear.
And nothing will change unless there are millions in the streets. So, let's just make sure we know that too. This is a revolutionary moment. It's not going to change by just being nice to these people. I believe in the humanity of them, but I believe that we need to hold them accountable and that we need to demand change and by whatever means necessary, because our people should not suffer.
Now, to your point, we have, and I'm going to just say this, Noelle, an Irish lawyer, saying to you that we're not going to do this by being nice to these people. You understand what I'm saying? We have Ricardo, a doctor, an MD, Dr. Joy James, a professor, Pam and I, some ranting, raving lunatics who are.
I'll be that. I'll be.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah, I'm
be
with you on that. Yeah, that's why we on this side right here because we liable to
outraged.
go left.
And,
So,
and I believe that everybody should, there's lanes that people be in this warfare. Because although, the FOP most definitely, and I, agree with, Ricardo and going after them. But you got these judges,
Yes.
who sanction. You got to deal with that. You got these DAs who sanction and who go along with, and you also have lawyers that are, historically have done, wrong. We have got to deal with all this thing all the way across the board. But I'm saying, people can do lanes, and what it is that you got to deal with. Some people ain't going to agree that you should go to the FOP like that, but I agree that you fight them on every level, and the level that you're fighting on brings more people in that wasn't there before. Just like the letter I had got from Dr. Martin Luther King III, the Black Congressional Caucus, which Dr. Suzanne Ross had got them to write, and they wrote a letter stating very clear that Mumia was innocent, and pressure was put on them. The second one that they put out, I'm talking about the entire Black Congressional Caucus, right? The second one they put out, they said that they believe he could be, and that pressure come from, I believe, the fraternal order police that pushes them. Um, the I'm saying that to say the letter that was written by the congressional people, the letter that was written by Dr. Martin Luther King III, Dick Gregory, Reverend Abernathy, and the Black civil rights people, and these things we used to get into churches. And it ain't what I'm saying. It's what they're saying, and then they wanted to hear what it was that I'm saying. So in these different ways, you're able to bring in more people. I'll be able to bring in a Ricardo. I'll be able to bring in Noel. I'll be able to bring in different people to say what it is that we're saying, and it's acceptable. In the halls of academia, it's the same thing. But we all got to understand that these people on no way is any friends of ours. There's the Black Association, the Association of Black Policemen, and 100 black cops. Ron Hampton was the head of the Association of Black Policemen. He stood on the front line with his baby in his arms in 1995, and standing firmly against the death penalty and talking about what was happening with Mumia as well. And 100 black cops in law enforcement, Brother Michael. And he speaks out on all these things. And I would suggest that pull these people into what it is that you're talking about, Dr. Alvarez, because they would be helpful, in that. Um, like I'm saying, we got to fight all the way across the board. All the way across the board. It's not a one or two things that we can do, and all the support that I can throw into all these different um, plans of ending this whole thing, plans on bringing Mumia home, plans on bringing other folks home. um we got to do it, and we got to just continue to build, and don't be afraid to stand up. and
speaking
uh
of,
and oh, here's one thing that um Tucker said, and Wendell said about missing evidence. Again, they gave that law. Tucker was saying that he was granting Mumia that appeal because that evidence was missing. Okay. Also is missing in this case, and is the piece of the bullet that they claim killed Faulkner. And they lost evidence to prove, their point. They also, this is another, profound thing, and I just don't understand why this was never brought up in court. And or if it was, how come it's not something that is constantly talked about? The fact that they said that they forgot to take the paraffin test on Mumia to prove that he shot that gun. This was in the wintertime. I watch a whole lot of them CSIs and all them other, police things. When you shoot a gun, you get blowback. This is the winter. Mumia got a one piece, snowsuit on, and where if he had shot Faulkner, they would have introduced the snowsuit with the blowback on it from the gun. But it has never been introduced. There's no one actually talking about that damn clothes that he had on.
They said
You
they forgot to test his hands. They
Huh?
forgot to test his hands.
That's what they say. So I'm gonna give him that. But what about the clothing that he had on? It should be on there as well. The blowback from shooting the gun. That's my point.
I mean, how do they forget to test his hands? That's about as, I mean, that's the first thing you're gonna do. I mean, especially if you introducing evidence in regards to a killing of a quote unquote officer. I mean, I'm quite sure that that would have been the first thing. They didn't forget. They knew that they wouldn't find anything if they remembered. You know what I'm saying? But I want to because we can go on, and I definitely we want to invite you all back on as more information comes up. So please make sure that you hit us up. I'm a jealous interviewer, so if you don't hit me up first, I'm gonna be just highly upset. But anyway, but I wanna say April 24th, Mumia's 70th birthday. I was at his 40th birthday, no, at his 50th birthday in 2004. Went down there with Chairman Fred Jr. The 60th birthday, we actually hosted one of the days on that Thursday, and the 70th, I'm saying on air right now, the FTP movement is definitely interested in joining you all in whatever programming is going on in Philly. We would love to assist in sponsoring a day or whatever. We'll come out there. So, let us know what's going on with the birthday celebrations and all that, and make sure that we there to assist, because that's the least we can do.
Also, I think, is it tomorrow that Pam Africa and Cornell West will be in conversation?
Mark
And
Lamont.
Oh,
And
and I reached out to Cornell too, by the way. I did email him. I was going to try to get him on by surprise today, but he just emailed me back a few minutes ago. He's in Houston, but definitely he sends his love. And you can tell us about both of those.
Oh, Pam, Mama Pam, can you tell us about your event tomorrow with Cornell West and Mark Lamont Hill?
right, and I'm talking about, tell you definitely about that, but the amazement of the activism within the movement. And Sister Yane, who is in Costa Rica or Colombia right now, and was contacted by um, one of Cornell's uh, campaign managers that was in Philly, and let her know that he would be in town. He's coming in Saturday, but he's doing an event in Bethlehem on 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And also, Yane said, "Oh wow, we can put something together." This is late Wednesday night,
Mm.
no place, nobody. So she says, "Pam, well, what if we pull um, Mark Lamont Hill and Sister Susan Abuela and from the Palestinian movement and Brother Gabe, and so this goes into Thursday, right?" So I said, "Well, I'm down," and we don't have Mark Lamont Hill, we don't have we don't have OK or Cornell first, right? So, but all this fell together yesterday. We got a flyer out yesterday, and we didn't have a place. This being Black History Month, and we can only get Sunday, and we needed to put them in a time from 11 to 1. I say that we got a space, but it holds about 75 people, and you got Mark Lamont Hill, so it's going to be Zoomed and YouTube, whatever that technology is, and they didn't give us the numbers yet, the Zoom stuff, but it's going to be about what's happening right here with Mumia, what's going on inside the prisons, that kind of program. You had a flyer. I sent it to you, Kalonji.
Okay. Yeah. I
Is that
will
worlds?
say it
Is
again.
that
Is that making worlds?
right?
Yes.
And the
Yes.
rest,
And actually, with a shameless self plug, Dr. James and I will actually be at Making World on March 28th, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Is that the correct date?
Right. There's as you emphasize so much unity and collaboration, I think, between FTP movement and common notions, and talking about the issues that you've talked about. You're focusing on Mumia, but you've also been very clear it radiates out. And this is, police violence, state violence is impacting everybody, if not as physically, then emotionally and, intellectually. So that's going to happen by March 28th at Making Worlds in Philadelphia. And, beyond cop cities, there's a lot of discussions to be having. So hopefully we might all reconnect.
Yeah. It
I
would
know.
also be wonderful to recognize that one very readily available arena for advocacy that links multiple disciplines is the mandatory reporting requirement around elder abuse. So that
Mhm.
links medical, it links legal, it links teachers, it links social workers, it links clergy. And I'm hearing the message around Liberate Our Elders that they're perceiving this as institutional elder abuse, which is really something that I've always believed. And that is a place where we can, if we can develop a reporting of elder abuse across multiple medical and legal and clergy associations, if we can develop that report fully, it's a way of honoring the call to liberate our elders, I believe. So I want to close, share that with you, Joy, in a sense of how we can collegially come together in a way that is a coherent, strategic way of addressing the violence, which is well documented now by the American Public Health Association. Even the American Medical Association is acknowledging it.
Thank you.
Listen, we'll definitely keep us posted on any and everything that's going on around the country in regards to Mumia or medical apartheid or any other issues. We're here for that. I also want to extend an invitation to Yane and the other organizers. If you all haven't set up just yet, we are willing to broadcast the event tomorrow right here on Black Power Media if you'd like. So just reach out to us, let us know if you guys plug you in and make it happen. So, our thing is utilize our platform as much as possible because we want to make sure that we continue to, we're not here. I can't speak for everybody. Let me just say this. I'm not here for the money. I'm here to make sure this is a selfish mission right now. This is about revolution. This is about change. It's about justice. It's about love. And it's about keeping our movement alive. And I appreciate all of you. Studied your work for years. And, I've, I've been organizing for 38 years myself this year. Right. And I say, you know, now I have children and even my oldest grandchild organizing. So I'm saying that to say that we're here to rumble and we're going to win. And that's all to it. There's no accepting defeat. And we don't care what the FOP say. We don't care about what Cop City says. We don't care if you're a black lawyer, black pig, Reem Faulkner, whoever. Get the hell out the way because we're here to win. And either, you can be a part of this mortar or you can go ahead and step aside and allow us to live peacefully. So again, we thank you all for all that you are giving, the sacrifice, the commitment, and we're looking forward to speaking to you more about what it is that we can do as a collective.
Love, not fear.
No doubt. So we're checking out. This is Guerrilla Intellectual University. Dr. James, great job today.
And so are we going to keep rolling at some point? Is GIU University or Union? We going to keep working, and
Yes.
hopefully maybe other people will join us.
Absolutely. And we're going to keep the same name. It's Guerrilla Intellectual University. So I don't know what Dr. James is talking about. Also,
Okay,
make sure
thank
you check out. So we will, at least once a month, we'll be doing Guerrilla Intellectual University. Look out for new RSTV pieces that will be dropping this week coming. Also, be advised that, as Dr. James alluded to, we have a FTP Movement and Common Notion Publishing out of Philly. We're going to be doing a political education series for the rest of the year. So look for books, look for the documentary Organizing is the New Cool, look for everything from, yes, and it's going to be all things organizing. So make sure that you check us out. And I want to shout out my family, FTP Movement. This will be our 20-year anniversary, June 9th. So we're hoping that any and all can join us in this continued fight. You're checking out Guerrilla Intellectual University, Dr. Joy. We'll see you soon. Be safe and stay on point.
Peace to all families. Stay well.
Yes. Peace.